morning.
It's such a great honor to welcome you to astroteach. Could you please introduce yourself to our audience and tell us how your early experiences led you to NASA Apollo mission?
My name is Poppy Northcutt. I live here in Houston, Texas, and it's hard to really explain how it is that I ended up in mission control because so much of it was a matter of luck and being in the right place at the right time. I majored in mathematics as an undergraduate at the University of Texas in Austin. I had expected to probably be a teacher, maybe a high school teacher, which was sort of the expected thing for women back in at that time when I was a young woman. But when I graduated, I was looking for a job and I got a job offer from a company called TRW Systems, which was a contractor at NASA. And it sounded more interesting than teaching. So that's basically how I ended up there.
You began at TRW and become the first female engineer in NASA mission control.
Well, in terms of challenges, I think the challenges for women were massive at the time, and many of these challenges still remain. Uh, it was just a very stereotypical time. Uh, where I was at the company where I was working for, I made the leap from being a computerist to a member of the technical staff, which was sort of generically what they called engineers. My trade is actually mathematics, but we all sort of functioned as engineers. Um, I was the first woman at Houston operations to become a member of the technical staff. There were maybe a handful at the company installation in Los Angeles, in Redondo Beach, which was a bigger operation. But women were just extremely rare in those technical fields at the time. I was fortunate to work for a company that was a little more progressive than NASA itself, and perhaps more progressive than most of the companies at the time. But, the other part of it is that I didn't really follow the rules. The rules at that time were that women were operating under these wage and hour laws that restricted how much you could get paid, really. They claimed they were protective laws, that they were protecting us from working too much. But the real effect was they protected us from promotion and from pay. Uh, I just didn't really follow the rules. My supervisor would come by and say, uh, we can't pay you past, we can't pay you, for staying here and keeping on working tonight. I just disregarded it and no, I didn't get paid for it. But I thought it was important. Uh, if you're going to be a member of the team, you have to be a member of the team. You can't be leaving when the rest of the team is staying to work.
For those who may not know, you worked on plotting the astronauts' way home from the moon.
So basically, what I worked on was the development of a whole family of programs that were used to target, um, the lunar orbit insertion, the trans-Earth injection, mid-course corrections, the maneuvers that the Apollo spacecraft made on flights to the moon and from the moon. I particularly worked on the returning to the Earth from the moon.
You worked on Apollo 8, Apollo 11, and Apollo 13.
Well, I actually worked on two others as well. I worked on 12 and 10 as well. Apollo 8 to me was the most challenging, partly because it was the first time I was in mission control. So that was a whole new experience to try to learn how to do that. That was never really part of what we were expecting we would be doing. We expected to deliver our return to Earth program and, be home watching like everybody else was when they were actually flying these missions. Um, so that itself was a big challenge. But that mission, I think, was also a big challenge because there were so many new things that were really being used for the very, very first time. I mean, that was the first time human beings really had left the left the what's called the sphere of influence and entered the sphere of influence of the moon, where they'd really been controlled by the gravity of the moon. Of course, 11 was the landing mission. And I think the whole world, if you were alive at the time and conscious, you were watching the landing on the moon. We, by that time, it was not really that challenging to to what we were doing in that mission. Everything went nominally, fortunately, for us in terms of getting them back to the Earth from the moon. 13, of course, was in many ways, I think the most successful mission, not because it accomplished mission objectives, but because it showed our ability to recover from a disaster and to
Mhm.
safely get the astronauts back to the Earth. Um, I mean, talk about a challenge. That's a real challenge to bring someone home from roughly 200,000 miles away.
Apollo 13 has been called NASA's most successful failure.
The atmosphere was extremely tense. Okay, um, it's like no one really breathed until until they had splashdown. I don't think anyone really relaxed until they saw them coming out of the spacecraft once they were back in the Pacific Ocean. My particular role was basically the same as it was in all of the missions, which was I was there to assist the retrofire officers if there were any problems with the return to Earth capability. Uh, in some ways, it was not a terrible challenge for us. Our software was built for aborts. Okay, it was used for nominal returns, but the whole purpose of the software was to be able to do an abort, to deal with the unexpected, to have to do the things that you had not planned for, and to do them rapidly and optimizing whatever it was you needed to optimize, whether it was fuel or time or a combination of the two of them, and just get them safely back to the Earth from the moon. The biggest challenge, I think, for us was the uncertainty of not knowing how badly damaged the spacecraft was.
After NASA, you became Houston's first woman's advocate.
Well, I was on the mayor's staff in Houston, um, and one of the things that I worked on was to increase the number of women on boards and commissions. So I wanted women to be able to have a voice and to be able to have some impact in terms of the policies and priorities and procedures where I lived. The other thing that I worked on a lot was trying to get women into the police and fire departments because they were very restrictive at that time. Um, First of all, our fire department had never had a woman,
Mhm.
and the police department, women were shuttled into women's jobs. Okay, they could really only work in the women's jail. Uh, I mean, just very stereotypical kinds of things. Her name is Rosalie Lopez, and she told me that when she was a little girl, like 13 years old in Brazil, she saw a picture of me and a story about me working in the control center, and that inspired her to go into planetary science. And I was just really astonished by that. That just seeing a picture of a woman and just reading a story about a woman could actually change what a 13-year-old girl and a whole, halfway around the world would aspire to do.
Mm.
So, as I said, I keep learning over and over again how important visibility is for women. I think the main thing that I would tell people is don't feel like you have to be bound by other people's expectations. Write your own name. And yeah, it can be scary sometimes, but again, don't let other people's expectation define your future.